Fellas, I want to add one more thing that I've come to the conclusion that a lot of the videos you see on YouTube with these waste oil burners, some of these designs, you'll try them out and you'll discover they don't work. And I think what's happening is some of these people are doping their oil with huge amounts of gasoline just to get the device to perform for the camera. I've come to that conclusion because I've tried a lot of these torpedo burners and stuff. I've tried just the straight pipe and all that, and some of these Delavan nozzles they sell and stuff like that, they don't work for a lot of applications you see successfully operating on YouTube. And I've come to the conclusion that if you're having trouble with your waste oil burner and you can't get it to work, just dump more gas in the oil and the thing will work. That's pretty much as simple as that. But I am trying to achieve the goal of pure waste oil. That is not my objective, is to make a video for YouTube. I actually want to provide a resource, an information, platform where people's comments could help each other out and have something that's actually valid, not just a bunch of damn YouTube videos of someone trying to make a buck. I am interested in making money, don't get me wrong. The amount of work I put into this couldn't possibly be done for free, but the truth is important on this platform, on this channel. I also have a website directed towards these kind of things. I'm not trying to debunk anyone or defame anybody, but I think people are putting gas in the oil and making it look like their device works when in fact it's not. They're cheating. It's not a real waste oil burner. I mean, I'm not trying to accuse people of using steroids in the waste oil burner community, but I've tried some stuff, it just doesn't work, and I'm gonna post a video of me attempting to build some torpedo waste oil burners to show that they just don't work with my nozzles. Now, many YouTubers have successfully achieved this, and I've had people tell me that I'm wrong, that it will work, and I had footage of it not working, but I lost it in editing. I accidentally deleted it. I become bored with the abundance of footage, and I tend to delete gold nuggets like that on a regular basis. But just one tip to add, if you're having trouble getting the thing to run and you just want it for a forge, just dump some gas in your oil and the damn thing will work. Don't go too hot of a solution, obviously, but something as low as a 30% solution will make any nozzle you build, even just a piece of setup like this, will work if you put enough gas in it. It's not going to be a real oil burner. This is just one of those siphon nozzles you'll see that just not work on pure oil. But as I've said, if you're just trying to perform for the camera, I can make this thing shoot an 8-foot flame out no problem, and it won't even look like gas. So for people who are actually trying to build and you're frustrated with this, if you want some real information, I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm going to show you through the process of discovery on camera, some of these setups don't work on pure waste oil. You got to add gas, which some people in the waste oil burner community, the forge guys, the blacksmiths and stuff like that, this is where my focus is more at, because the waste oil heating community is kind of a very problematic thing for me. I don't agree with the prospect of using waste oil for heat. There's a very small number of us who could ever obtain the amount of oil you would need to practically heat a facility with that. I mean, you're talking a gallon an hour. So what, you're going to change people's oil for free? It's going to take you an hour for an hour's worth of heat? People are just going to give you free oil? I mean, it's okay. I'm getting off track here, but there you go. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with some of these builds, and I want to try to help people who are actually trying to use this stuff. So if you're having trouble getting it to work and you just want to get through the job, if you have an objective that has nothing to do with building a waste oil burner, you just need to use it, just add a little bit of gas in there and the thing will run fine. You're not cheating if you're using it for a forge. I mean, gas is $3 a gallon. I mean, that's a huge amount of energy. I don't know what you would need much more than that on a specific melter or something like that. But at any rate, I just had to add that. Something is going on with some of these builds, and I'm going to be posting some videos on that. Not to debunk anybody, but to shed some light on a problem I encountered. I'm trying to build something. Someone gave me advice on how to build, and the damn thing don't work unless you put 40% gas in the oil. So what the hell, man? I feel people are being misled. So I'm shutting up. I'll babble about something else here for another 20 minutes. What's up, fellas? In this video, I just want to talk about a couple of things regarding igniting waste oil burners. If you are building one of these things and you're having trouble getting it lit, I just want to tell you right now, don't worry if it takes you an hour or 2 hours to get this thing lit. It's something that you built and you have to learn how to use it. This is not something you purchased off the shelf of a store and it's just going to turn on when you flip the switch. So don't get discouraged. I've got some information compiled over here that took me a couple of years of mistakes to learn and a lot of reading and research and watching videos. And I have it all in one spot here. And I just want to go over a list of 7 problems that you can encounter that will stop you from being able to ignite a waste oil burner. And the first thing I want to talk about is fuel blending, because a lot of people don't know about fuel blending. I certainly didn't. What I mean by fuel blending is that during ignition, I do a 50-50 mix. So basically, if you try to ignite a waste oil burner without mixing your oil with 50% gas, you're going to be disappointed. Now, that doesn't go for all waste oil burners. As I said, this particular model using this specific siphon nozzle, this thing fires up like instantly. I've never seen anything like it. Definitely the best waste oil nozzle I've ever built. It simply runs off an air compressor and that's it. No pumps, no blowers, nothing else is needed. You don't have to have any of this stuff. However, it does have its drawbacks and we'll get to that. But the reason being is synthetic oil just won't burn. And what I'm getting at is even commercial waste oil burners will not burn pure synthetic oil. They won't do it. You have to mix diesel fuel with them. So another thing is some nozzles are designed to work at specific viscosities. And if you are using waste oil, it's just not gonna be flammable enough at that particle size, at that micron size, to combust. So you have to add gas to it to decrease the flash point or whatever it takes to get it to burn better. So sometimes you may have to run your waste oil burner on a 10% gas mix or maybe even a 20% gas mix. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your waste oil burner. You have to understand that even some commercial units like those Delavan nozzles, those things don't work on waste oil. You can't just run those on waste oil. I mean, I've seen guys try it and fail. Maybe you can do it, but on pure oil, they just don't work. The second thing is your air input. If you have too much air going into the system and not enough fuel vaporizing, obviously it's gonna go out. And that's something I didn't know at first. So when you turn this blower on low, it's still blowing too much air on the triac. So I actually have to hold my hand over this blower and muffle the intake air to where it's almost nothing, or toggle the switch on and off. That's one little trick that I learned about starting this thing up, that the intake air is just too much on the lowest setting for fire up. You need a very, very small amount of air usually on fire up on these blower type waste oil burners. And I wish I would have known that. It would have saved me a lot of time. So when you go to fire one of these up, the smallest amount of air possible is all you want, to where it's just barely drizzling out of there. You don't want any force whatsoever. The second thing is combustor preheat. I a lot of times get impatient and I just don't, for whatever reason, want to sit there with the propane torch. I mean, I have torches that I could lean and just lean right on the tank and walk away for a while. I'm just too lazy or in a hurry, so I don't do it. But you want to preheat the tank. It goes so much smoother when you preheat. It's almost instant light up on this one, for sure, if I just sit there and heat this up for a while. Which is another thing I just didn't ever bother with. I'd be stuffing gas in there and paper and rags and everything else, when in reality all you gotta do is just preheat the canister till it's super hot and then start the burner. But it's just something I failed to do. Filtration. Filtration is going to cause you a lot of problems you may not have anticipated. Even if you filter the oil, and put it into a clean container, I have a video that I just posted on this, you're still going to end up with a significant amount of sludge and dirt getting through. This is sludge and dirt removed from filter oil. And this stuff will clog up your siphon nozzles in a real hurry. So if you're using a siphon nozzle or even a drip feed can also be clogged up by just continual flow of tiny particles and hairy fibrous filter paper. You've been finding a lot of filter paper in waste oil. It's a hairy, fibrous, matty material that clots up really strong and has been the demise of many burners of mine. I didn't realize the problem until I tore them apart, unfortunately. The next thing is fuel preheat. Most commercial units preheat the fuel. So neglecting to do this ourselves and then wondering why the system isn't running is a pretty obvious solution, I guess. But sometimes you have to preheat the fuel, especially if you're working out in really cold weather. It makes a huge difference, not just because of viscosity, but because of flash point and the amount of energy needed to be put into the fuel to warm it up to vaporization point. If a huge amount of energy is needed to boil that oil and it's not there, it's going to cause problems. Just think about trying to flash vaporize steam. It absorbs a tremendous amount of energy. So fuel preheat is something you might have to do. Then there's design. Sometimes your design just doesn't work. Let me give you an example. You see videos of these guys with the torpedo videos, the torpedo burners, and they just take a waste oil atomizer like this and they stick it into a straight pipe of some kind, like maybe an oxygen tank or some big tube or something like that, or some pipe this long. For whatever reason, it's not always going to work. The only way I could get this thing here to work was with this elbow on here. Without this elbow, this thing won't burn. So what I suggest is when you go to design your oil burner, don't just build a nozzle and set it in place and to where you can't maneuver it. I actually walked through the garage with that nozzle in my hand and just started sticking it and stuff to see if I could get a flame to shoot out the other end. And this is the only thing that would do that. So had I took the time to mount that nozzle on a 3-4 foot piece of pipe like this and had it all nice and pretty looking, then went to fire it up, and then it just doesn't even work. So in the design phase, don't subject yourself to any rigid design. You just kind of try so many variations, because only one nozzle will work with this. The other nozzles I've built don't work well with it. So design is going to be a pretty huge roadblock, a pretty huge showstopper for some of you guys. You cannot just hook a nozzle up to a 3-foot piece of pipe like this and get it to work. It doesn't work that way. If you do use the exact same dimensions as the individual who built that nozzle, it will work. But I have found that the fuel to air ratio is very critical, in the sense that there's a very fine line between too much and too little, and the burner won't work. So there is a little bit of a problem with that. For example, this nozzle here that I'm going to be doing some testing on when it gets warm out does not work with that burner. It will if I put a lot of gas in it, but I'm not trying to run 30% gas in my nozzles. So I can't get that nozzle to work in anything. It won't work in this or in straight pipes. Yet my other atomizer nozzles work in this thing just fine. So very strange. Give you an example, I have this one here, which also works in only elbow pipes. This is a standard Ventura setup. You have the air ejector and then the oil line there. This thing atomizes oil very well. It just doesn't have a high enough flow. If I were to modify the intake to a bigger piece of pipe, you know, closer to the penstock area, it might be better, but it just didn't put off enough of a flame. Very low flow, and that's why I built this. But as I said, only this nozzle will work in those tubes. So the dimensions of this are very critical. So you might not just be able to slap some parts together and get it to work. I've failed hundreds of times. It's best to just stick to what's easiest. If you go messing around with the siphon nozzles and stuff like that, plan on
having a huge pain in the ass because they just, they're very hard to get right. The ones that are the most forgiving and the easiest of all to light and build are these things right here. These are just drip feeds and they're powered by an air blower. No air compressor, no oil pump. These are the most forgiving of all. If you just want to get this over with, if you want to get in business, get a freaking oil burner going so you can get your forge up and running. If you actually have a job for this thing to do, this is the way to go, guys. I'm telling you right now, if you go screwing around with these nozzles and stuff like this, you're going to be messing around for days trying to get one to work right. You could copy a couple of my designs that you see working, like the nozzle I just showed you works great, but the chances of you having some of these materials that I have and getting the exact orifice size is going to be kind of hard. I have a surplus of tiny tubes and things like this, and I believe this tube right here is my air spear and this nozzle. Now I'm showing you this because we're about to see the difference between what works and what don't. There's not that big a difference. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the air spear. And that's what's hiding down inside this nozzle. It's inside of here, placed right about like that by this nozzle, right where the divergence takes place, or the convergence. Or is that divergence? I can't remember. So at any rate, this nozzle works perfect. It works fine. It doesn't have a very wide range of operation though. You have medium and then really high, and that's about it. This nozzle here I built for the same burner, and yet it doesn't work nearly as well. You can get it lit, but it's extremely unstable. It's extremely huge. It's probably about a 200,000 kilowatt burner nozzle. It sucks up oil like a black hole, basically. It just pumps way too much, and you can see here I have an adjustable oil spout there, so I could kind of tamper with it. But you would think this thing would work awesome. Turns out it's very hard to light. It does work, but this ain't the way you want to go. This thing's a pain in the ass. This one lights right up, but I can't adjust the flame as much as I can with this one. This one is a surefire deal. You are gonna get a flame out of this thing, and you're gonna be able to control it with a lot of control. You can go from a 6-inch flame to a 6-foot flame with this. Maybe even longer, and maybe even shorter. But I guarantee you it works within those parameters. I have footage. This, however, the smallest flame I can get out of this before it goes out is probably about a foot, and it's a very flowery, fat fireball. And I think it gets about 2 to 3 feet long on full power. And in between, it's okay. You can adjust it in between that, but sometimes you just don't want a lot of heat. And I like being able to turn down the oil burner to a very low setting, and you cannot turn this down or it will stop siphoning oil. Maybe with a good gravity feed tandem siphon setup it would work, but for you guys to be able to find these exact orifices and stuff and build this yourself, it's probably going to be very hard, because you could build a nozzle that looks just like this, have it sitting there in your garage and go to hook it up, and it won't work. It won't work. And you'll be watching my video and wondering how I did it and why yours ain't working, and it's simply maybe you're 3/1000ths of an inch bigger on your air spear and you're getting too much air, or you're 3/1000ths of an inch smaller on your oil and you're not getting the right oil flow. I have found that the oil to air ratio on this thing is right around, I think it's 4 cubic foot per minute and about 4 liters per hour. Whatever this compressor runs at here. 4.5 cubic foot per minute is at 90 psi, and about 4 liters per hour. That's a good air to fuel ratio. And for whatever reason, like I said, honestly guys, for you to look at my video and see what I did, even the one that shows how I built this, If you don't have the dimensions exactly the same, and I mean exactly, you're going to get a different beast. It's not going to act the same. And these are hard to get right. I had to dial this needle in, so it takes a lot of messing around with. It works, but it wasn't as easy as this. This thing here, you weld it together, you put oil on it, you turn it on, and you light it. There's no need to experiment. But I just didn't know that you need patience in the beginning. It can take 2 to 3 hours to get a waste oil burner lit, and if you don't have the patience to endure through that first hour and you give up, just know that the first time I lit this took about 2.5 hours, maybe longer. I gave up and had lunch and everything. I couldn't get it lit. Turns out I was putting too much air into it in the beginning. Any preheating that was done was immediately removed by the large amount of air flowing into the system. So just the purpose mainly of this video is just to let you guys know, just don't give up. You may have a working machine sitting right there in front of you and you're 2.5 hours into it and it won't light. I'm telling you now, don't let that deter you, because after that 2.5 hours, I could come back to this thing and have it running in 3-4 minutes sometimes at full tilt. Because I learned some things about it. I learned that if you take these knobs off and you let a little jet of fire fly out the back, and you leave this ignition port open and you let a little jet fly out the top, it gets the rear end of this thing super hot, heating the air, vaporizing the oil. I didn't know that in the beginning. Those little things you learn throughout the process just make it all that much better. So if you are actually building these things and you're scratching your head and you can't get the damn thing lit, just remember about fuel blending and patience. It's probably going to be the most two important things that you're looking at here. If you build a device that requires too much gas, then you have two things going on. Either you have too much air or you have too much fuel. If fuel isn't spraying out of the front of the unit, then you probably don't have too much fuel. One sign that you have too much fuel is that it's literally spraying out of the front of the device, like literally dripping and pouring. Okay, and that's usually not all that big of a problem. Too much fuel is like a mess, you know, a big, lazy, stupid flame or stuff like that. It's not usually a showstopper. It's just not what you're going for. But what is a showstopper is too much air. If you don't have oil flying out the front and it won't light, you probably have too much air. If you have oil flying out the front and it won't light, you can still have too much air. Air input on ignition is critical, and you usually want it to be very low unless it's a siphon nozzle. Like I said, that siphon nozzle is instant ignition almost. Can have it lit within seconds with no preheat. But I use a fuel blend to do that. I would never try and start this on just straight oil. It's just a waste of time. I never do it. I don't even bother trying anymore. You are probably never going to design a waste oil burner that lights well off straight synthetic motor oil, and that's all I use. If you have different sources of oil, gear oil is far worse, by the way. If you're using gear oil, it has a flash point of like 500 degrees. So your biggest problem most likely is your air input, if it's a device like that. If it is a siphon nozzle, air input can also cause you to have too thin of an oil flow, and you need to add more oil. If you want to make sure you have oil literally spraying out of the device in some situations when you're in testing. That's one way to determine if it's an air issue. If you don't have it spraying out the front, there's something else going on. So I was trying to touch on something there and I kind of lost train of thought. But I would say those are your biggest issues right there. You got to start off with a fuel blend. Some people start with kerosene and whatever. I just dump a little bit of gas in the oil. That's the best way to go. And there you have it, guys. Fuel blend and patience. The first and the last are the most important. All this other stuff can be fixed with patience and fuel blending. So that's my 2 cents, guys. I'm posting this video because had I seen this in my beginning days, it would have saved me from so much trouble. Just hearing someone else say that it's going to take you 2 to 3 hours to get this thing lit the first time you mess with it, it would have gave me, you know, a little bit more endurance to not give up. So another thing I want to add in, don't ever light these things on pure gas. Been there, done that. Not a cool thing to do. So I don't know, I hope this video helps some of you guys out. I know this is kind of a boring vid. You were expecting to see something burn or melt or roar like a rocket engine, but this is really important information for guys who actually want to build this stuff. Just thought I'd share that with you.